We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility.
All right. Well, in his inaugural address, President Biden noted the various factions at odds with one another here in America, including a rural and urban divide. Now, lawmakers and residents in rural America know one of the widest divisions is digital and the cost to fix slow or non-existent internet service. There's almost been universal support among elected officials. Joining us now to discuss is Hugh Odom. He's the founder and president of Vertical.Consultants, a telecom expert and a former AT&T attorney. Our panel is also standing by, Jack Kingston and Bobby Eberly. Hugh, I want to start with you. Talk to us a little bit about how important it is to make sure that we have internet connections across rural America that's consistent with what we have in our cities. I think people are learning the hard lesson right now during COVID lockdowns about the importance of having reliable internet. Talk to us about why it's been so difficult to have that in rural America thus far.
Well, you're exactly right. One of the things that we found out since COVID is that there was a poll that said about 90% of people said the internet was either essential or important. The majority of that 90% said it was essential to them. The bigger issue was in rural America, about 60% of people said wireless service internet was non-existent or was substandard. The reason being is that as technology has rolled out, technology is great, but the vast focus of that technology has been in urban areas. You have a situation by which you have people getting left aside. You have the have and have-nots. There's a digital divide, or what I like to call a wireless wall. If you go into certain areas of the country, you're in an urban area, you start to drive outside of that, and you have an ability not to connect to internet for education, for health services, for businesses. You can't get employment opportunities because you don't have the access and the efficiency on the internet that is provided in those areas.
Now, to that point, we talk about something like the U.S. Postal Service, which is basically the safeguard, the safety net, so to speak, to make sure that people in areas that are inaccessible are not locked out of that mailing ecosystem. Why have we not taken a similar approach, perhaps, to something as crucial and essential as digital? I think I remember back with AOL, even after AOL became free, there were still people all over America who were depending on dialing up to get access to the internet.
Well, the simple answer is it's the return on investment for the wireless providers, the infrastructure developers. And this is a situation by which right now, during COVID, there are thousands and not tens of thousands of existing cell towers out there that are underutilized. There are situations by which the wireless providers have done and tried to do a good job, but they need to get temporary facilities out to these locations to serve these areas. And that's a short-term solution. Long-term solution is there has to be a cooperation between wireless providers, the infrastructure developers, that's the cell tower companies, and the local and state governments to come up with a plan, either to get those providers to have a concerted effort to serve those areas, or to allow smaller wireless providers, smaller infrastructure developers to build in those areas. That helps with the services for healthcare, education, et cetera. It provides jobs in those areas. It provides a better economy for those rural areas to be able to keep up with the digital economy that is in the urban areas that surround them.
Now, Jack, I'll come to you because, again, this is broader than just us talking about the internet in a vacuum. We're really talking about access to opportunity, something that Republicans know all too well, that opportunity is the single greatest vehicle towards allowing people to empower themselves economically, socially. So when we hear this breakdown right now about the deficient nature of our digital access in rural America, what do you think of this? And again, what are some of the solutions you believe could actually lead us towards a more robust digital platform for America?
Well, Joe, when I chaired the Agriculture Appropriations Committee and represented rural Georgia, one of the models that we looked at that Hugh knows very well was the rural electric efforts in the 1940s to bring electricity to the rural, sparsely populated areas. Today, you look at Indian reservations or you look at smart farming, they have to be connected to the wire because telemedicine would be extremely important on a reservation for example, are in small rural hospitals. But the other thing is now farmers, want to have technology brought on the field so that their farm can be run remotely, their tractor, their fertilizer application, their use of water. There's so many things that can help our rural production and our quality of life there. So Hugh is exactly right. And I'm glad that we played a part of it when I was in Congress, but we have to build on it.
Bobby, I'll come to you. Same question. How do we make sure that all Americans are getting access to something that's become so crucial? I think we've seen this from the ban of President Trump on Twitter to the shutdown of Parler. The digital world is really now a proxy for the world at large, and being locked out is effectively a death sentence in the modern age.
Yeah, it's really an interesting problem, and it's a significant problem because you saw how big tech can shut down conservative voices. The dilemma here, what's interesting, and I like what Hugh said about working in the state level with the carriers, the cell phone tower providers, and the legislators, because I think that's the way to go. One of the dangers here, one of the things I look at is when you hear speeches by AOC and others, you remember the Obama phone and that, having internet access is some kind of civil right. What I don't want to see is the federal government getting involved in this and massive taxpayer funds go to set up what should be private endeavors, working at the state level, working with the legislators and these companies to find a cost-effective way of providing that coverage without bringing the federal level into it, federal taxpayer money, to achieve the same thing.
Well, to that point, Hugh, I want to bring you back in here because when you talk about the China threat, again, us living in this 24-hour news cycle fighting ourselves, China with a 100-year plan, you talk about their infrastructure into the actual hardware. Now you see the emergence of things like 5G with the Biden administration being particularly vague about where they stand as it relates to things like the Hawaii deal in China. What do you think we need to be doing moving forward to make sure that America is on its strongest footing in this digital space, in the telecom space, and also making sure that our national security is protected?
Well, we kind of learned during the pandemic we had a high reliance upon China to provide us certain services and equipment and things of that nature. It is even more problematic in the 5G race. Understand that Huawei is the primary producer of equipment needed for the infrastructure to be built out. They provide that equipment. They hold 29% of the market share right now. The two other competitors are Nokia and Ericsson. Total, they hold about 30%. So what's happening is in the United States, we really don't have anybody who's doing it, who's building the equipment. So we're not only in the game and playing it, we have nobody on the field. And so if we don't put our resources toward getting that part of it identified and getting American companies building this technology, we're relying upon foreign companies to do it. That opens up for exposure, takes away part of our economy that could be thriving and putting people to work around the country.
All right, Hugh Odom, Jack Kingston, Bobby Everly, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, what's in a name? Apparently quite a bit to some.